Welcome back to Squawk on the Street and the last rendition of the Santelli exchange for this week, of course, being Friday. The crisis is entering, post-crisis period's entering its fifth year. So Father Time, of course, helps things heal, and some programs help in other ways. Exactly what the split is impossible to tell. That's why there's so much angst when we look at record levels on the Dow Industrial Average. What's real? What's not real? We know that the economy is doing better in many regards. We don't know how much or how little these programs have kicked in. That's a hard place to be. But it's an even harder place if you're looking at housing. Housing predated the fall of 08 crisis. It caused it. So you could say it's even more than 5 years post-housing's big explosion. And since, what are we left with? We still have the GSZs, the government-sponsored zombies, and they're still in many ways doing 90% of the mortgage funding activity. Now, granted, if you look at Freddie and Fannie, the losses have somewhat stopped because we see with housing, I mean, you've seen our stories on CNBC, the condominiums in Florida, things are starting to move. But this could create an even worse dynamic, and I'll tell you what I mean. Think price controls. You know, we're littered in history, whether it's grains, think post-French Revolution, some of the shortages they experienced. Many ways, these are all because, read Mises, these are government intervention and controls lead to inequitable relationships between supply and demand. For people my age, think about the lines of gas stations in the 70s when government got involved in issues that affected supply and demand. Is it really any different in housing? It's all about time and it's about pain. I would rather have a real housing market, but why hasn't one sprung up? Why isn't securitization coming back? Why aren't banks getting more active? Because there's no money in it. We have now taken rates to a point where the risk reward to institutions outside of that 90% financing that's occurring in the GSEs just doesn't make sense to banks. When are we going to learn our lesson? This goes back to the fundamentals of capitalism. Now, granted, we'd have some pain in a smaller period of time. Should we, let's say, tomorrow say, listen, that's it. Freddie and Fannie aren't going to do any more financing. Yes, it would be a bit tight to try to buy or resell houses. But what would happen is at some new rate of interest where banks think they could actually make money making you loans on houses, the industry would start to come back. Well, those arguments didn't seem very good in 08 because everybody wanted the quick fix. But as time seasons these issues, somebody out there needs to wake up. We need to get back to where the government isn't price controlling the mortgage market like they have in energy, like they have in grains, think Jimmy Carter, because the best way for everybody to be able to interact buying a house will be for the private sector to take care of funding. And the only way the private sector is going to come back is if the government clears the zone. Just my opinion. Melissa Lee, back to you.
Thank you, Rick Santelli.